Rev up your engines! Today I'm going to show you one of the most important preventative maintenance things you can do on an older car if you want your engine to last as long as possible. The overflow reservoir, which is normally all the way to full, kept going about halfway to the bottom. Sometimes a little bit will evaporate from the overflow, so if you got to put a little coolant in every so many years, it's no big deal, right? Because it will just evaporate. Because as you can see on a system like this, the overflow, hey, it's not pressurized, so some will evaporate. But I noticed every couple of months I'd have to add a little coolant. I thought, where is it going? Well, this is a Toyota that has pink coolant. If you look on top of the air conditioning compressor, you'll see there's little bits of pink coolant on top of it. Well, how did they get there? On the bottom of the dipstick tube, it had coolant on it too. Well, the only thing that's over here is the water pump. And Toyota has pink coolant. That's where the pink is coming from. Now the car was still running at normal middle of the range temperature gauge between hot and cold, pretty much halfway. Nothing really had changed much, but you want to do preventive maintenance in this case because this is a water pump, and water pumps inside have a little hole that's called the weep hole. The seal starts to go. Instead of the coolant getting in and ruining the bearings and the whole thing breaks off, the coolant leaks and then drips down the water pump, down the side of the engine, and gets all over the place. Now, I have to admit, I was lazy and kind of dumb because I saw this like 3 months ago where I was losing coolant, and I did drive all the way from Tennessee to Rhode Island, right? And when I got to Rhode Island, it had lost maybe about 4 or 5 inches in the reservoir, but I mean the thing could have broken while I was going down the road. It was stupid of me not to change this water pump then. I'd be stranded in the middle of nowhere. So if you see the coolant's coming out of that little weep hole, and the front of your engine has coolant leaking on it, it's better to change it ahead of time. Do you really want to ruin an engine? Most of the Toyota engines that I've seen ruined were ruined because they were overheated by poor maintenance. It wasn't the car's fault. It runs out of coolant, the engine's going to overheat, right? But don't be like me. Don't push, especially, I mean, this thing's 17 years old. It finally wore out. Now it's still working and the temperature gauge is okay, but when you see it starting to leak like that and you see you're losing a little coolant, sooner than later is better. So we're going to show you how to change this one. Now there's not much working room here, so first we're going to take off the stupid beauty cover to give us a little more room, and we'll move that out of the way. Now you got to take the fan belt off because it drives the water pump, so in this case we get a long extension bar and a 19mm socket. And as you can see, there's a big bolt here. You put it on the big bolt right there, and then when you pull on it, that releases the tension on the serpentine belt and we can get it off. Now it's out of the way. Not much working room, so in this case leave this here, so then you can easily put it back on later. We don't want to make a mess, so we'll put a pan to catch the coolant when we take it apart. Then we got a 10mm wrench. You need a small one because there's not much working room. We'll take all the little bolts off. We have a bird audience today. We just take all the little bolts off here, one at a time. I realize one thing, the Toyota water pump, there's different size bolts. So make sure you remember which one went where. Some are long, some are short. Now, unfortunately with this Toyota, you can't see the bottom 2 bolts. So you have to feel them with your fingers. This is why, if you're gonna do one of these, buy a new pump first, because then you'll know where the holes are. There's only one hole left now, and I gotta feel it and then take it off. You can't see it, but you can feel it. This is why you want to do like I'm doing now, first thing in the morning, cold engine. Otherwise, you're going to burn your hands. Then when you get the last bolt out, the coolant comes out. Then you wiggle it to get the water pump off. You know, there's not much working room here. Not so tight, we're going to have to slide the alternator to the side. There's not enough room to get it out. They didn't make these things to work on, to say the least. Now we remove the top bolt, but the bottom bolt we just need to loosen so we can swing it out. There, now it's loose enough. We can just pry it out of the way a little, get us enough room to pull the water pump out. And out it comes. Tight squeeze, but there it is. Now you have to put a new O-ring. It doesn't have a gasket, it's only got an O-ring. And the weird thing is the O-ring is built into the block. So you got to get some of this 3M weather stripping, glue it in place, wait about half an hour so it sets. As you can see here, the ring is now set inside the circle, glued in. Let it dry for about half an hour. You do not want this to get pinched, or you'll have to do the whole job over. I'm using an ASIN water pump. That's the original equipment on Toyota. Don't buy a junker. You want it to last. But sometimes the replacement pumps are different than the original pumps, and the replacement ones like this come with special extra bolts. And as it says in the directions, the kit comes with 2 new bolts for this hole and this hole here. So for these 2 holes, you use the new bolts. The rest, you use the old bolts. Follow directions. So now we slip the pump back in and bolt it up. Then when you tighten the last of the 6 bolts, slide the alternator and the belt back on. Now it's time to put the fan belt back on. If you forgot, hey, just Google it. Here's a picture of how the fan belt goes. So while we're holding the lever, we snap the belt on. Get the lever out of the way. Make sure we'll start it up. Make sure the belt's on right. And as we can see here, it's on and it's running fine. It's all lined up. And now we have to add coolant. This is Toyota pink coolant, so that's what I'm using. If you'll notice, I got the car jacked up in the air. And I jacked it up in the air because I want the radiator to be the highest point, so the air will migrate in it while it's warming up. So we'll take the cap off, crack a hole in the aluminum, put aluminum foil on these, and we need a funnel because it's too small. Fill her up. This will take a while, so to make it go faster, we'll start the car up to help purge the air. If it's really hot, you can put a fan in front of the car, but it's cold today. Now, it did take about 15 minutes to fill the stupid thing up because this is a Toyota. It's got a skinny radiator, air bubbles forever. But once you get the bubbles out, take it for a 3-4 mile drive, and then later in the day or the next morning, check it and top up if needed. So now you know how to do a little preventative maintenance. In this case, the water pump wasn't overheating yet, but it was starting to leak. You don't want to blow an engine because of something dumb like that. As you can see, you can easily do it yourself with simple hand tools. A little preventive maintenance can make your engine last hundreds of thousands of miles. The only time I really see Toyota engines blowing head gasket is because people are so used to the Toyotas needing no maintenance, they just kept driving them. And if you keep driving them until the water pump breaks and you run out of water, you're going to ruin the engine. So don't ruin an engine for a part that you can get. I got this as a factory part online for 49 bucks. It's an ASIN Toyota pump. Don't buy the cheap Chinese one. Buy the good one. The previous one lasted 17 years. Who knows? Maybe this one will last 17 years too. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Well, you knew it was going to happen with electric cars, and indeed it's happening. People are fighting over who gets to use the charger. Right? Not too bad at most gas stations, right? Because they got a bunch of pumps, and hey, if they're all full and there's none for you, so you wait till somebody's done. What does it take, 4 or 5 minutes, and they're done filling it up, right? Now, back in the 70s when they had that gas crisis in the United States, people waiting around the block. Yeah, there were fisticuffs then, but electric cars, that's a different story. Let's say you're there, and there's one left. That could be an hour wait. So who the heck is gonna be sitting there waiting an extra hour? As in that picture, these people are fighting over who gets to plug it into their car. What did they say? Might makes right. You think the bigger guys are the ones going to win? Who knows? If you saw that picture that I posted a while back in Vancouver, there was blocks of people waiting in line with their Teslas trying to charge at a ski lodge, you know? And people at ski lodges generally are spending a lot of money to go skiing, right? And they spend a lot of money on their Teslas anyways, because this was a Tesla-only charging thing. You could only charge if you had a Tesla and one of their cards for using it to charge, right? And they're sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting. Now, this was in Canada, so I'm assuming people weren't fighting. Because generally, the only time people fight in Canada is when they're playing ice hockey, and that's a national thing. You know? But here in the United States, I could see some massive brawls if electrification starts taking over, and people, I got here first, I can't wait for you, and boom, off it goes. Well, I think I'll take a trip to California and drink some toilet water. Yes, indeed, you can now, because California is now set to become the second state to okay rules to turn wastewater into drinking water. Now, most of the time, when they started doing that, they'd use the wastewater and they'd purify it to a certain extent, and they'd use it to water lawns, fountains, and stuff like that. But now they're going to make it so it's drinkable. Now, of course, it's going to take a lot of energy to do that. What they got to do is they got to purify it. They take all the minerals out because there's bad poisonous minerals, lead and stuff in there, right? But once they get it out, then they got to add it in, and they're going to make it so people can drink it. So they're going this far while they're still blowing billions of gallons of water, growing almonds in the desert. Right? It takes so much water to create these almond trees. But that's big money in California. Big money rules, right? So you go to California, the people will be drinking toilet water reformulated. But guess what? The almond trees are getting the fresh water coming from the mountains, pumped in there. Water and water and water. Do we really need almonds? I know the yuppies want their almond milk, which I can't understand. It tastes like crap. Give me real whole milk. It's got some flavor to it, right? The trees will be getting fresh water and the people will be drinking toilet water. Well, to me, that's California in a nutshell. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.